I have demodified my BMW R1200GS Rallye so that I can sell it. So if you're interested to know why, stick around. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. If you haven't done it yet, do that thing down below. Now, I have demodified or partially demodified my BMW R1200GS so that it is ready to sell. Now, some of you might be asking why I would do that instead of just leaving everything that I have done to this bike on there, because it may have the appearance of having better resale value or just sales value, increased value from having all these modifications on it. But the reality is, at least in my opinion, is that the modifications that I made to this bike, as useful as they were, really don't add that much value for someone looking at the bike. And a couple of the modifications that I had made, specifically the handguards, well, they show some wear, and I wanted to remove those and put the stock ones back on so that you can't see the wear and it looks more like it does stock, and that it doesn't show the off-road use that it has been through. Now, I had considered taking off the crash bars, but these are stainless steel crash bars, and I still think the blue looks good until you get up close. So I didn't want to take that off. Same with the upper crash bars. I had considered taking those off, but I'm going to leave those on as well. But there's a handful of parts, like in this box and the luggage rack, that I took off because I think the resale value of just throwing them on Craigslist would be a few tanks of gas on whatever my next bike will be. So if you're interested to see the things that I took off of this bike, then stick around and I will go through all those little bits and pieces. This is a re-record. I had put together a pretty extensive video taking all these pieces off, but something happened to my computer and I lost a lot of data. So I am doing this again, so bear with me. I'm gonna probably go through this pretty quickly. So one of the first things that I did is I took off the Altrider brake enlarger and the step that comes with it, so when you're standing it's easier to find the step to be able to apply the brakes. These, I haven't looked at the price, but I think I paid like $80 or $90, and I don't know that this is necessarily going to add that much value in selling this, but if I got $30 on eBay on this, that's a few tanks of gas, and someone else may potentially want to use this. So that was one of the things that I took off. Staying towards the back of the bike, the Rallye version, if you're familiar with the Rallye, it did not come with foot pegs. So I have some Givi Luggage additional foot pegs that I put on both sides, and then I had to add the foot peg itself. I went ahead and took these off because I know there's a handful of bikes out there that don't have foot pegs, and I'm going to try to throw these on eBay as well. I think I paid almost $200 for this setup, front, left and right, and I'm going to try. It doesn't really add anything to the bike itself. The Rallye version doesn't come with these foot pegs, and you can get stock ones if you want those. So I took those off as well. One of the biggest modifications that I did is I took the Tusk luggage rack off the bike. I think luggage racks and types of luggage are very subjective, and I wasn't going to put the cases on the bike because I may use those on some other bikes and for some other stuff. So I didn't want those. I didn't want to leave the rack on there and not put the luggage on, so I went ahead and took the rack off. Now, I know that Tusk has stopped offering this rack for the R1200GS, which I also think fits the 1250GS. So I know that if I put this on eBay or somewhere, someone is going to want this rack for their bike because you can't get them anymore. I also think the bike looks a little bit better without the rack on there with no luggage, and since I wasn't going to put luggage on there, I decided to take this off as well. I had purchased a very inexpensive Headlight Guard. It's just some plexiglass. It's my understanding that this actually isn't DOT approved. I imagine the dealer would likely take this, if I trade the bike, would likely take this off. And again, I think headlight covers are also very subjective. This is faded a bit. It's been out in the sun, it's scratched. So I decided to go ahead and take this off. I don't know if I'll try to resell this or if I'll just pitch it. I didn't spend a lot on it, but I thought it would be better to take this off so that it maybe doesn't detract from the value of the bike, and it just has the standard stock headlight up here with no guard. I had also had the Givi tank lock ring up here on the gas tank, And because I'm not planning to leave the tank bag that I had on here, and I had done some customization for the tank bag on one that actually isn't a Givi bag, I decided to go ahead and take the tank ring off so that it doesn't detract from looking at the tank, seeing this ring, and not having a bag that goes on it. And also, tank bags are subjective. Some people like them, some people don't. And if you have a Givi ring, then you're kind of stuck going with Givi. So I decided to take this off as well. So anyone who's looking at this bike can look at it and have their own thoughts and ideas and not really be tied into one type of tank bag or another. Also, I wanted to put the stock screws back in since the Givi one takes a different type of screw. So I restored the tank and the lid back to the gas cap back to its original state. The last thing that I did is I put the stock handguards back on. I had kept these. Unfortunately, I couldn't find all of the pieces and parts, so I had to spend about $40 buying a couple of the missing pieces, but I was able to put that back on. And I did that because the Barkbusters that I had on there showed some wear. I've dropped the bike in the garage a few times. I've dropped it off road a handful of times. I've had it spin out on me, and anyway, the Barkbusters did their job, but they took a little bit of a beating, and I didn't necessarily want that to show on the bike as I'm getting ready to sell it. So I took the Barkbusters off, put the stock handguards on so that it looks more like a road-ridden bike and not necessarily like a heavily off-road ridden bike. So yeah, stock handguards back on, Barkbusters gone. There are two modifications right in this area that I am not going to change. One of them is I had put header guards on so that any rocks coming up wouldn't dent the headers, it would deflect them. I had seen some pretty damaged headers on these bikes from riding off-road and having big rocks kick up. So I'm not going to take those off because I'm concerned if I do that, the headers might be a little bit scratched up and maybe not look great underneath. So I'm going to leave the header guards on. The other thing is the skid plate. I've looked underneath. It has a few gouges, nothing really big, but these skid plates are out of stock and it's hard to find them. So I'm just going to leave this one on. I don't have the factory one anymore. I modified it. The bracket that held it is different from this skid plate, so that's also gone. These are two areas that I'm going to have to leave it as it is. It might show that it's been ridden off-road, but it shouldn't really show. There's no damage there, and this isn't a very strong skid plate. These get beat up pretty quickly if they're taken on some pretty extreme terrain, and it looks fine. There's no dents in it, maybe a few gouges, nothing too bad. So yeah, I'm going to leave that the way it is. One other modification I made to the bike I decided to keep is the Altrider tail rack. I don't have the stock screws that go in or the covers that go in over the top of this. It was just easier to leave this on than it was to take it off. There shows some wear in here, so it'll detract a little bit from the wear of having bags strapped across the side. So this is one other thing I decided to leave on. I might change my mind as I get closer to selling it, but for now I'm just going to leave this on. All right, those are the demodifications that I had decided to do to this bike to get it ready to sell, and a couple of the things I decided to leave on. I actually have a question for the viewers out there. Let me know what you think about leaving the blue crash bars on, even though they're a little bit dinged up, whether or not I should leave those or consider taking them off. It's pretty easy to take them off. It wouldn't take much time, but I'm wondering how it would look if you are interested in buying this bike, having them on or not on. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts on that are. Also, the skid plate and the header guards, I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are when you see a bike that has a skid plate and maybe some header guards, what your thought is if this has been ridden off-road or if I had just farkled it because those things were available to make it look like it was more of an off-road worthy motorcycle. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you're in the process of maybe getting rid of your own bike or trading to another bike, this will give you some ideas of things that you could consider doing and where you can maybe change the appearance of the bike a little to make it look like maybe it wasn't ridden as hard off-road or had some of the drops that your bike has had. Or if there's some things that you want to salvage, maybe to sell so you can put a few tanks of gas in your bike like I'm planning to do. Or if there's some things that you can salvage to use on your next bike. So thanks for watching. Get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there.